In the dusty heart of the Old West, where every soul carried a secret and every glance was weighed with suspicion, there was a man unlike any other. He never raised his voice, never sought the spotlight, and never drew attention to himself. Quiet as the desert wind, he sat alone in the small, creaking church every Sunday, a figure so unremarkable that the townsfolk barely noticed him. But what they didn't know, what they refused to believe, would soon turn their world upside down. People whispered behind his back, mocking the silent stranger who never spoke a word. Some called him a ghost, others a fool, and many simply ignored him. Yet beneath that calm exterior was a strength forged in hardship, a courage hidden from view, waiting for the moment to reveal itself. And when that moment came, it was unlike anything the frontier had ever seen, a moment that would forever change the lives of hundreds. As the sun set behind the jagged cliffs, bringing long shadows over the town, word spread of a man who had quietly saved travelers from certain doom. 300 voices rose in unison, each bearing testimony that the quiet man's actions had been the difference between life and death on those perilous trails. Suddenly, the laughter faded, replaced by awe and gratitude, as the truth could no longer be denied. This is the story of the silent hero who walked among them unnoticed, whose courage and sacrifice were whispered from campfire to campfire, growing into a legend that would echo through the canyons and across the plains. A story of redemption, mystery, and a bravery that spoke louder than any gunshot. It's a story you won't want to miss, because sometimes the quietest voices tell the loudest truths. Stay with me as we unravel how a man, once laughed at and overlooked, became the savior of 300 lost souls, and discover what this tale from the Old West teaches us about courage, humility, and the power of unseen heroes. In the years when the Old West was still wild and untamed, survival depended not only on skill with a gun but on wisdom, courage, and sometimes sheer luck. The quiet man was a mystery to everyone in town, a drifter whose past was as hidden as the winding canyons nearby. He never told his story, and no one ever pressed him to. Instead, he preferred to blend into the background, listening more than speaking, watching more than acting. This made him easy to overlook, the kind of man townsfolk laughed at behind his back, convinced he was just another harmless ghost of the frontier. But the land itself seemed to know better. Trails that had claimed the lives of many travelers bore silent witness to the dangers lurking beyond the horizon. Treacherous river crossings, sudden storms, and ruthless bandits who preyed on the weak. Few dared to venture alone, and those who did often paid with their lives. It was into this unforgiving world that the quiet man stepped, guided by a purpose no one yet understood. His knowledge of the land, his patient vigilance, and his uncanny intuition would soon prove invaluable to hundreds who found themselves trapped in the wilderness. One cold evening, as a fierce storm raged through the mountains, a group of travelers sought refuge in the church where the quiet man was sitting alone. Their faces were worn, eyes filled with desperation and fear. They had lost their way, their horses were exhausted, and supplies were running dangerously low. The townsfolk whispered about the unlucky souls who had dared to cross the wild terrain at the worst possible time. But the quiet man stood, offering no words, only a steady presence that somehow calmed the anxious crowd. It was the first sign that beneath his silence lay a strength that would soon ripple through the frontier. Stories began to circulate about how the quiet man had led lost travelers through impossible conditions, guiding them to safety without fanfare or recognition. Some claimed he had an almost supernatural sense of direction. Others swore he could read the signs of the land like an ancient map. What was undeniable was the growing number of grateful voices who credited their survival to this unassuming figure. Yet, despite all the tales, the quiet man never sought praise or reward. His motives remained a mystery, deepening the intrigue and making the townsfolk's earlier mockery seem all the more foolish. As the harsh winters gave way to spring, the quiet man's reputation quietly grew. Those who had been saved told their stories in hushed tones around campfires, and travelers started looking for him whenever they passed through town. But for every person he helped, the man remained the same, humble, silent, and watchful. He was like a shadow cast by the mountains, always present but never imposing. And it was this paradox, a hero who shunned the spotlight, that made his story so unforgettable. The first time the townsfolk realized the true impact of the quiet man's deeds was not in the church, but miles away on the rugged trails. A caravan of weary settlers had been caught in a violent storm, their path blocked by fallen trees and swollen rivers. Panic set in as supplies dwindled and hope faded. But then, just as despair threatened to take hold, a familiar figure appeared, the quiet man, moving swiftly and confidently through the chaos. Without a word, he began directing the group, identifying safe crossing points, and offering water from hidden springs only he knew about. The settlers watched in awe as the quiet man seemed to possess an unshakable calm, a kind of silent leadership that pulled them back from the brink. One by one, he helped them navigate treacherous terrain that had defeated others before. His eyes, sharp and focused, scanned the horizon constantly, sensing danger long before it appeared. And when bandits threatened the caravan's fragile safety, the quiet man was there, not with a drawn gun, but with quick thinking and decisive actions that kept everyone alive. It was a moment that turned fear into gratitude and silence into reverence. Back in town, rumors swirled like dust storms about how this mysterious man saved hundreds, but no one could tell the whole story because many had never seen him speak. He was a man of action, not words, and that made his legend grow even larger. Some said he had lost his family to the harshness of the West. Others believed he was seeking redemption for a past only he knew. Whatever the truth, his actions spoke louder than any tale, weaving a thread of hope through a land where trust was scarce and survival uncertain. The church where he sat so quietly became a gathering place for those who owed their lives to him. Each week, more faces appeared, grateful travelers, curious townsfolk, and even skeptics who could no longer deny his impact. The once dismissive laughter faded into silence, replaced by nods of respect and whispered thanks. They began to realize that sometimes the greatest heroes are not the loudest, but those who carry the weight of the world quietly on their shoulders, unseen yet indispensable. What made the quiet man truly unforgettable was not just the number of lives he saved, but the way he changed the spirit of the community. He reminded them that courage does not always roar, and that heroism often lives in humble acts of kindness and bravery. His story was a lesson etched in the dust and stone of the Old West, that true strength is measured not by the noise you make, but by the lives you touch and the difference you leave behind. The quiet man's presence in the town slowly began to alter the way people saw not just him, but themselves. In a place where mistrust and suspicion often ruled, his humility and steady bravery became a beacon. It was not the flash of a gunfight or the roar of a saloon brawl that captured hearts, but the silent acts of guidance and protection that saved lives when hope seemed lost. Mothers whispered his name in gratitude. Children looked up to him with wide eyes, and even hardened cowboys found themselves softened by his quiet strength. One winter, when the snowstorms trapped a group of miners in a remote canyon, the quiet man's knowledge once again proved invaluable. While others feared for their lives, he set out alone into the blizzard, navigating the frozen wilderness with a resolve that seemed almost otherworldly. Days later, he returned leading the weary miners back to safety, their faces etched with disbelief and thanks. It was a rescue that no one else could have dared attempt, and it solidified the quiet man's reputation as a guardian of the lost and desperate. Despite the growing legend, the quiet man never changed. He remained a solitary figure, refusing any rewards or honors. When asked why he risked so much for strangers, he would simply nod and look away, as if the answer was something too personal to share. This mystery only deepened the townsfolk's fascination. They began to realize that his silence was not emptiness, but a shield, protecting not only himself, but the fragile hope he carried for everyone around him. It wasn't long before the quiet man's story reached beyond the town's borders. Travelers who owed their lives to his guidance spread word across the vast, open West. 300 souls, men and women from all walks of life, would one day gather to tell their stories, tales of survival and courage that traced back to the quiet stranger who saved them without ever asking for thanks. Their voices created a chorus that could not be ignored, forcing even the most skeptical to acknowledge the hero they once mocked. This moment marked a turning point. The quiet man was no longer a shadow on the edges of their lives. He became a symbol of resilience, a reminder that sometimes the greatest heroes walk softly but leave an indelible mark. And while the town still held onto its old ways, they could no longer deny the power of the quiet man's story, a story that would inspire generations to come. The gathering of the 300 travelers was unlike any event the frontier had ever witnessed. They came from distant trails and dusty towns, drawn together by a shared debt of gratitude to the quiet man who had saved their lives. As they filled the wooden pews of the little church, the same place where he had once been laughed at, the air was thick with emotion and reverence. Faces once weathered by hardship now shone with hope, and voices once trembling with fear rose strong with thanks. Each traveler had a story to tell, of narrow escapes, hidden paths, and moments when all seemed lost until the quiet man appeared like a guardian angel. Some spoke of being trapped by raging rivers, others of evading ruthless outlaws, but all shared a common thread. Without his guidance, they would not be standing there. The church, once a place of mere routine, transformed into a sanctuary of miracles and redemption, where silence gave way to heartfelt testimonials that pierced through the heavy air. For the townsfolk who had doubted him, this was a humbling revelation. They listened, eyes wide and hearts open, as the stories painted a picture far beyond the quiet man's humble exterior. They saw the truth of his sacrifice, the countless nights spent alone on the trail, the dangers faced without complaint, and the selflessness that defined him. It was a moment of collective awakening, where pride gave way to respect, and laughter was replaced by tears of gratitude. Yet even in the face of such overwhelming praise, the quiet man remained unchanged. He took no credit, said no words of pride. Instead, he allowed the voices of those he saved to speak for him, knowing that his actions were the true measure of his legacy. His silence was a powerful testament, a reminder that sometimes the deepest stories are told not in words, but in the lives touched and the hope restored. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows through the stained glass windows, the quiet man rose and walked out into the fading light. Behind him, the church echoed with the voices of 300 grateful souls, forever bonded by a story of courage, humility, and the quiet strength that changed the course of their lives forever. After that unforgettable gathering, the quiet man became more than just a legend whispered on the wind. He became a living symbol of hope in a land often ruled by fear and uncertainty. But despite the admiration, he never settled in one place for long. Like the restless spirit of the frontier itself, he moved quietly from town to town, always watching, always ready to help those in need. His presence was a comfort to the weary and a warning to those who would do harm. In one town, plagued by drought and desperation, the quiet man found a way to lead the community through hardship. While others despaired at the barren earth and empty wells, he quietly organized efforts to dig deeper, find hidden springs, and ration water with care. His calm determination sparked a change in the people's hearts, inspiring them to persevere when giving up seemed easier. Slowly, life returned to the parched land, and the town remembered once again the power of silent strength. But not all stories in the Old West were about survival alone. They were also about justice, often harsh and unforgiving. The quiet man's reputation reached those who sought to exploit the weak, and though he preferred peace, he was not afraid to stand firm. One night, when a ruthless gang threatened a family's homestead, the quiet man stepped into the shadows, his presence enough to turn the tide. Without drawing a gun, his mere resolve forced the bandits to retreat, reminding all that courage is sometimes louder than bullets. The quiet man's actions echoed a deeper truth about the West, that survival was intertwined with honor, and that true courage was shown not by boasting or violence, but by protecting those who could not protect themselves. His quiet heroism was a testament to a forgotten code, one that valued patience, loyalty, and the strength to do what was right, even when no one was watching. As word spread, more travelers sought the quiet man's guidance. They came with stories of hardship and hope, trusting that the man who had saved 300 souls before would help them find their way. And though he never spoke much, his deeds spoke volumes, a legacy of resilience and quiet valor that transformed lives across the vast, untamed frontier. One of the most remarkable tales came from a young woman who had lost her way in the sprawling wilderness. Alone and frightened, she had nearly given up hope when the quiet man appeared, as if from the very earth itself. Without a word, he took her hand and led her through the dense forests and rocky passes, shielding her from hidden dangers and guiding her back to safety. Along the way, she learned that his silence was not emptiness, but a powerful presence that calmed fear and sparked courage. This woman's story became a beacon for others, especially those who felt lost or invisible in the vastness of the West. They saw in the quiet man a reflection of their own struggles, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, help could come from the most unexpected places. His silent guidance was a lifeline, a proof that sometimes the greatest strength lies in listening and understanding rather than speaking. As years passed, the quiet man's name became synonymous with hope and salvation. His story was shared by campfires and in saloons, growing with each telling into a legend that transcended the boundaries of the frontier. But through it all, he remained grounded in humility, never seeking the fame or fortune that so many others craved. His mission was simple yet profound, to be a silent guardian for those who needed it most. The quiet man taught a timeless lesson, that true heroism is not about glory, but about the courage to do what is right, even when no one is watching. His legacy was built not on loud declarations or grand gestures, but on quiet acts of kindness and bravery that saved lives and inspired hearts. And in the harsh, unforgiving world of the Old West, that was a legacy worth more than gold. For those who heard his story, the quiet man became a symbol of something greater than survival, a symbol of faith in humanity, the power of humility, and the unspoken bonds that connect us all. His tale reminds us that sometimes the quietest people make the loudest impact. The quiet man's influence was not limited to just saving lives. He was also a healer of wounds unseen by the eye. In a land torn by conflict and hardship, many carried scars deeper than any bullet or blade could leave. Soldiers haunted by battle, widows burdened by loss, and children robbed of innocence found solace in his silent presence. Though he spoke little, his actions spoke volumes: a helping hand, a shared fire on a cold night, a patient ear to those who dared to confide. One such story tells of an old war veteran, broken in body and spirit, who had retreated into loneliness. The quiet man found him, not with words, but with a steady companionship that reminded the veteran he was not forgotten. Slowly, through small acts of kindness and quiet strength, the veteran began to heal. Their friendship became a testament to the power of empathy and the profound impact one person can have without saying a single word. In a time and place where trust was scarce, the quiet man became a bridge between broken souls. His ability to listen without judgment and act without expectation inspired others to do the same. The town began to change, not because of laws or guns, but because of the subtle influence of a man who taught them the value of compassion wrapped in silence. Despite his growing legend, the quiet man never sought to claim leadership or control. He believed true strength was in serving others without desire for recognition. This humility endeared him even more to those he helped, creating a ripple effect of kindness and courage that spread far beyond the town's dusty streets. His story became a quiet revolution, a movement born not from loud speeches, but from simple, powerful deeds that challenged the harshness of the Old West. And in every life he touched, a seed of hope was planted, promising a better future forged not by violence, but by understanding and quiet courage. But not all welcomed the quiet man's influence. Some saw him as a threat to the rough order of the frontier, a man who challenged the brutal law of survival by showing mercy and restraint. There were whispers of envy and fear among those who thrived on chaos and cruelty. Bandits and corrupt officials, threatened by his silent power, plotted to break the spirit of the man who had become a symbol of hope. One dark night, a group of outlaws attempted to drive the quiet man out of town. They believed his silence was weakness, and that a single shot would send him fleeing like the others. But they underestimated the strength hidden beneath his calm demeanor. Without a word, the quiet man stood firm, his steady gaze piercing the shadows. His presence alone was enough to scatter the would-be attackers, proving that courage did not need noise or threats to be formidable. This confrontation only deepened the respect the townsfolk had for him. They saw that true bravery was not about domination, but about standing up for what was right, even when facing overwhelming odds. The quiet man became a guardian not only of lost travelers, but of the fragile hope that justice and kindness could survive in the wild. Through these trials, the quiet man taught a lesson often forgotten in the chaos of the frontier, that strength and mercy are not opposing forces, but partners in building a better world. His example inspired others to choose courage over fear and compassion over cruelty, shaping the spirit of the community in ways no one could have imagined. And as the years passed, the quiet man's legend grew, not just as a savior, but as a reminder that even in the harshest lands, a single life lived with quiet strength can change the course of many. As time wore on, the quiet man's story became inseparable from the very soul of the Old West. He was no longer just a man, but a living legend whispered in every saloon and around every campfire. His name evoked respect and hope, a reminder that even in the wildest places, humanity could prevail. Yet, despite all the stories and praise, the quiet man himself remained humble and distant, as if carrying a burden only he could understand. His journeys continued, always moving forward like the endless horizon. Wherever there was need, he appeared, a silent guardian watching over the lost and the weary. But the greatest gift he gave was not just survival, but the lesson that true strength lies in humility, patience, and quiet courage. He showed that heroism doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it whispers in the softest moments and shines brightest in the darkest nights. Through every life he touched, the quiet man wove a tapestry of hope that stretched across the frontier. Travelers who once walked alone now traveled together, bound by stories of a man who saved 300 souls without ever seeking glory. His legacy was etched not in monuments or trophies, but in the hearts of those who believed in him, a legacy that would outlive even the harshest winters and wildest storms. The quiet man's journey was a testament to the power of unseen heroes, those who walk softly but carry a fire inside that cannot be extinguished. His story invites us to look beyond appearances and listen closely, for sometimes the greatest voices are heard not in words, but in the lives they change. In the vastness of the Old West, the quiet man proved that courage is not measured by noise, but by the depth of one's actions. And so, as the sun set on the dusty trails and the echoes of his deeds faded into legend, the quiet man remained a symbol of hope, a silent hero whose story reminds us all that sometimes the most powerful voices are the ones that never speak. The final chapters of the quiet man's life remain shrouded in mystery, much like his silent beginnings. Some say he disappeared into the endless plains, seeking new trails and new lives to save. Others believe he settled in a quiet town, living out his days away from the crowds and the praise. But no matter where he went, his influence lingered, a quiet force that shaped the spirit of the West long after he was gone. What remains undeniable is the impact of his story on those who heard it, a story of bravery without boast, sacrifice without fanfare, and strength without arrogance. The quiet man embodied the timeless virtues that the Old West desperately needed: compassion, courage, and humility. His legacy serves as a powerful reminder that true heroism is not about being seen or heard, but about making a difference when it matters most. In a world defined by chaos and conflict, the quiet man's tale offers a different kind of heroism, one built on silent resilience and unwavering faith in the good that lies within us all. His story encourages us to look beyond the noise, to find strength in stillness, and to believe in the power of quiet acts to change lives forever. As we remember the quiet man, we honor not just a hero of the past, but a model for the present and future. His life teaches us that even the smallest, quietest actions can echo across time and space, touching hearts and inspiring generations. And perhaps, in each of us, there is a quiet hero waiting to rise. This is the enduring legacy of the quiet man in the Old West, a story of courage, humility, and the silent power of the human spirit. As we close the chapter on the quiet man's story, we are reminded that true heroism often hides in the most unexpected places. He was not the loudest voice in the room, nor the flashiest figure in the town square. Yet his silent courage saved the lives of 300 souls and inspired a community to believe in hope, resilience, and kindness. His journey teaches us that strength is not always measured by the noise we make, but by the depth of the impact we leave behind. Throughout the harsh and unforgiving landscape of the Old West, the quiet man stood as a testament to the power of humility, patience, and unwavering resolve. His life challenges us to look beyond appearances, to value the unspoken acts of bravery, and to recognize that sometimes the greatest leaders are those who lead without fanfare or applause. This story is not just about a man from the past. It is a call for us to find the quiet hero within ourselves. What the quiet man showed us is timeless, that compassion and courage are intertwined, and that one person's silent strength can ripple out to change the lives of many. In a world that often values noise over substance, his legacy reminds us that meaningful change often begins in silence, with small, intentional actions fueled by genuine heart. It's a powerful lesson that echoes far beyond the dusty trails and old churches of the frontier. So, as you reflect on this remarkable tale, ask yourself, what quiet acts of courage are waiting to emerge in your own life? How can you be the unseen hero for someone else, offering hope and strength without seeking recognition? The quiet man's story invites each of us to embrace the power of silent bravery, to make a difference not through words, but through the impact of our actions. If this story touched your heart and inspired you, I encourage you to join our community. Subscribe to the channel, like this video if it moved you, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's keep this conversation alive. Together, we can honor the quiet heroes among us and inspire even more stories of courage and hope. Your voice matters, even when it whispers.